here today to do a tag. I've been slowly doing these more and more, and I saw this one on Cassidy Bondance's channel, and I decided I would do it as well. The first question of this tag is, how do you keep track of your TBR? And that's really easy for me. I keep track of it using Goodreads. That's more of how I track the books that I've read and how many books I want to read. Not all of my TBR is on that because some of these books I've had longer than I've had Goodreads. I've only been using Goodreads for like 4 or 5 years. Some of these books I've had longer. But most of my TBR is on Goodreads. Some of them are not. But that's how I keep track of what I want to read most of the time. So yeah, so mostly how I track my books is Goodreads, and I also do have like 2 big bookshelves in my room that have all my TBR books. Some of them are eventually going to be like a signed shelf, but right now there's 2 bookshelves in my room that are all my books that I want to read. And that's how I choose my books. That's where I pull my books from. Either it's from Goodreads or from my shelves. So, yeah. The next question is your TBR pile mostly print books or ebooks? And I would say it's mostly print books because I've had books, like ebooks, more than I've had a Kindle, so I think I just have a bigger collection. But I am like a clickbait fan on my Kindle. Like I always have a balance in my Amazon account, and if a book's for $1.99, I will probably buy it if it's in my mental TBR, and then I'll have it, and then I just forget that I buy books. So they really go by the wayside because I have so many physical books. But I like can't turn down a book that I know I'm gonna want for like $1. So like it's definitely physically I have a lot more books, but the ebooks I do tend to buy as less. So I think it's definitely more, but I do have a pretty substantial ebook collection. They just get neglected a lot more than the print books. So, but definitely more print books, but I do have a pretty nice ebook collection, which is more because I always have an Amazon balance. So, I think this has changed since I started blogging and since I started to go to conventions because I try to read all the arcs that come out either in the month that they come out or the ideal world the month before they come out. So like right now I'm really trying to read as many September reads as I can so that when I get to September I can start reading October and then November and then December. But it's hard. I think I also tend to like fall into traps because I am a very like, in the summer I read all summer books, in the fall I read a lot of mysteries, and then in the winter I read a lot of fantasies. So I definitely am like a seasonal reader, but I definitely try to read my arcs because then I give them away or I give them to people or I sell them back or stuff. So I would say I definitely try to read all my arcs in the month that I get that they're due. But I have books from New York City Comic Con last year that just never got read. So, and I also like just have weeks where I just want to read a Buffy novel, which has nothing to do with my TBR and nothing to do with the series that are coming out that I'm not catched up on. So I try to not like be like so specific. Like if I say, oh, I give myself a TBR, but there's no like, unless I have to read it for like a review, I try to like say like, oh, I really want to read a magic book this month, and then I do. Like I read The Best Kind of Magic this month because I just really needed a magic book, and that's what I did. But I try to read all my arcs in the month or the month before that they come out, so I can have my review up for publishers, and then everything else is just kind of whatever I want. So at least that's what I try to do. What book has been on your TBR the longest? I really had to think about this, and I kind of looked at the one shelf in my room that has had books since I can remember, since I got back from college, which was in 2010. So this is the book that I chose. It's the Lux books by N.R. Giberson, and this is the first book in that series. I definitely remember, I have the first 3 books, and I definitely remember getting this, I think when Walden's went out of business, because I got like a lot of books from there, and this was like one, I think it was like a set, and I got them all for like $10. So, but this is definitely a part of that series that I definitely had this book the longest. I think this is right around the time that I was transitioning, or maybe it was before. I think it might have been before that. I think it might have been right when I went to college. So maybe like 2007, 2006. Sorry, it definitely earlier than that. I think I was right around the time when I was reading the A-list novels and the Gossip Girl series, and this was like a historical fiction version of that. And it really did pique my interest. So I really was like intrigued by it, and I just never got around to it. And then I saw a lot of booktubers talking around it, and I just still never got around to it. But hopefully I will get to read this soon because it sounds really, really fun. And it's been on my TBR since about 2007. So that's like a pretty long book on my TBR. The book or the book series that I most recently added to my TBR is the Remade series that comes from Serial. A couple of months ago, we got like the first chapter of Remade from Serial in like Owl Curry box, and I was like, oh, that sounds so cool. And I never really thought about it again because I didn't read it, and I was like, oh, but that sounds like a really cool premise. And then about 2 weeks ago, I won a giveaway from Hypable.com for the Book Burners, which is another series of Serial, and I like went to the website. I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. And I realized you could listen to them as audiobooks, and I was like, oh my god, this is great. So I have the entire Book Burner series, and this series is probably the one I'm gonna read first because I like really think it's great. I think it's written by Kirsten White and a couple of other people. But I saw that you could listen to an audiobook, and I was like, game in. Once I finished reading the whole Mortal Instruments and Dark Artifice series, this is the next thing I'm listening to. So that's what I recently added to my TBR. And thanks, Hypable, for reminding me how much I wanted to read this series. The next question is the book that you bought or acquired for the best cover, and that's this one. It's Unearthed by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner. It doesn't come out until 2018, and the real cover of this book is really pretty as well. But I remember I saw this cover and I was like, oh my god, I want this, and I begged my friend to get it for me from ALA, and he did. So I'm really hopeful that I can read this soon, but so I can actually get the other cover when it comes out in January, because they're doing, according to this, they're doing a 5-city tour, and I hope it is definitely going to be in New York, because one of these authors is New York, and one of these are in Australia, and that's Amy Kaufman. So I really hope that they do a tour so I can get the new book signed by both of them. But this cover is really, really pretty as well. The next question is, what book on your TBR do you never plan on reading? And I looked at all my books, and I was like, I'm planning on reading all of these, so there's no book I plan on not reading. So I'm not really sure. I really don't buy. I mean, if I really am like questioning about a book, I just probably would rent it from the library and like read it at my leisure. But any book I own, I'm hopefully gonna read. It may take me a couple of years, but they will all get read. I had a conversation about this a couple times with one of my friends. Like, I can't DNF books. Like, if I start a book and I get like at past like 6 pages, I'm in. I have to know the ending. I have to know what's going on. I can't just not finish a book. And some people can do that, and just I need to know the end of the story. I need to read it. I don't want to be spoiled. I want to know through my own ears and eyes what the book's about. So yeah, so I can't DNF. So if I buy a book, it will be read. It just may take me a while. And I may change formats. I've had this happen a couple of times to me. Like, I've started reading a book and I'm not feeling it, and I'll immediately switch to the audiobook, and that seems to work a little bit better. I've done that twice, especially with Tamora Pierce books, because they were so freaking long and I just was not in the mood to read long books. So I've done that before. I've like started reading a book physically, and then I've switched it over to audiobook, and I just had a much better experience. So there's no book I own that I wouldn't read. Sorry guys. That's my answer. So the next book is, what book on your TBR are you anticipating like it's gonna come out? And there's two. I didn't get a picture of it, but the first one's Renegades by Marissa Meyer, and that's the School for Superheroes that comes out in November, and I'm so excited for that book. I've read everything by Marissa Meyer. I've read the Crest series. I really loved it. And I loved Heartless, and I'm really excited for Renegades. But I'm really hoping they have it at New York City Comic Con. Either way, it's gonna get bought, so it doesn't really matter. But the one that I pulled from my shelves for this was The Hazelwood by Ms. Melissa Albert, and this comes out in January, and it's a fairy novel, and I've heard really good things about it. I've also heard really good things about The Cruel Prince, which is another book that comes out in January that's also about fairies, so fairies is going to be a very popular theme for the month of January. But this just sounds like it has like a really cool premise, and it's already been optioned to be a movie, which is great, so I'm really excited to read this soon, and hopefully I will like it. Hopefully I get to read it before January as well. The next question is, what book on your TBR do you feel like everyone has read but you? And there are a couple of them, but this is the one that I had a physical book of, and that is the Luck series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. My friend Tiffany keeps telling me like every week, you have to read this book series. You have to read this book series. And I'm like, I will get to it, I So she's very adamant that I read it, and I have read other stuff by Jennifer Armentrout. I read If There's No Tomorrow, which I read recently, and I read Don't Look Back, which I read like a couple of years ago, and I really love them. I just haven't ventured into her paranormal stuff, but I want to. It's on my list. And another series that I'm in the middle of is the Thorn of Glass series. I need to read Queen of Shadows and Empire of Storms. It will happen. Those books are so big, so it's like I need to find like once I finish the Harry Potter series, it might be that series I read like a chapter because it's just so big to lug places, and that's my big problem. So, the next question in this thing is what book on your TBR does everyone recommend to you? I wouldn't say everyone recommends this book, but have one friend, Jen. If you're listening to this video, you know this is about you. But In 27 Days is a book she has been telling me to read for about 2.5 months, and I've got the arc of it, so I did listen to her that far. But I like it because it says she made a deal with death and time is running out, which sounds really interesting. So I'm excited for this, and I hope to read it soon, and she will be thrilled. So, Jen, maybe when we go to Boston, I'll bring it, and I'll read it there, and then I'll give you live updates of my reading habits. We will see. What book on your TBR have you been dying to read? And that is The Dreadful Tale of Prospero Redding by Alexandra Bracken. This is her first foray into middle grade fiction, and I heard from a friend of mine that it has some magic elements. I've been dying to read this book since she announced it, and I begged my friend to get this for me at ALA because it didn't exist at BookCon, and he got it. So this is probably going to be one of my next reads, if it's not the next one. And this cover is so pretty. Go on my blog and you can see the real cover of it, but it comes out in September, so I will be reading this either this week or next week for sure. The next question is how many books are on your Goodreads TBR? And that is 383, which I think is probably not totally accurate, but that's what Goodreads says. I mean, I want to read everything, so but 383 is a good number. Let's round it up and just say 400. But those are all my questions. I tag whoever wants to do this tag. So if you want to do it, do it. But yeah, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.